All right. Hello, everyone. We are live, I believe. I believe we are up and we are running. Hello. It is so good to see everyone again. If I'm a little out of breath, I just got done working out. I'm really back on the working out grind. I've been going really hard lately. So I literally finished like 2 minutes ago. So I apologize. I'm not as ready for this stream as I should be. As you can see, the tank top's back. The plan was to wear that PlayStation shirt that's in the thumbnail, but it's way too hot for that after working out. I just did 10 miles on my new bike and a bunch of weightlifting. So hello everyone. You don't care about that, but I'm just letting you know what's up if I'm a little out of breath and a little out of it. I'm going to drink my protein shake really quick. And then we're going to get rocking, everyone. Give me just 2 seconds. I apologize. The beginning of this stream sucks. I know. I'm making it quick, I swear. All right. So what can we talk about? What can we discuss today? Whole bunch of stuff we can get into. First of all, the early sales for Xbox Series X and Series S are out, as well as a little bit of rumblings on PlayStation 5. We don't have a ton of information on PlayStation 5 as of yet. We have a lot more on the Xbox consoles. But we do have some early numbers from Japan, which honestly are not good. However, I just want to say I don't think the slow start in Japan is going to be any sort of indication about how the PS5 is going to be selling worldwide. But we can, of course, go into that, what it means for the Japanese market. The Game Awards nominees are out for Jeff Keighley's Game Awards. There is a ton out there, so we can talk about what nominations feel good, what nominations might have been a little bit of a snub that we thought deserved it, whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff with the Game Awards we can talk about if y'all want to. We got updated info on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So the last stream, we had a little bit of info, right? We knew that Assassin's Creed Valhalla had a huge start in the UK, but we didn't know how exactly that was going to play out worldwide. You know, I had tweeted a few things that I was seeing that was giving me confidence that it was going to be a gigantic launch, but now we have the actual Ubisoft PR that came out, and yes, Assassin's Creed Valhalla has set a new global record opening launch for the Assassin's Creed brand. Assassin's Creed is a huge franchise, right? So for Valhalla to break that record, that's stunning. We can talk about, PlayStation 5 software sales. We can talk about Xbox Series X and S software sales, what we think Cyberpunk's going to do. A whole bunch, right? So for anyone that's new to this chat, the way this works, the way this stream works, it's driven by you. You are all providing the content. I'm just here to analyze, break down, and kind of give my thoughts on your questions. So if you're brand new, drop those questions down into chat. I get to as many free questions as possible, but if you want to guarantee that I hit your question, there is, of course, the super chat option. Super chats get priority, but they are not the only questions I answer, right? I hit as many free ones as possible. It's just, it can be a little difficult to hit every free question, but don't feel obliged to donate in the super chat. But that option is there. So we got a whole bunch of super chats that already dropped. I think we've got 3 of them. So let me start off with those 3 super chats really quick. Let me get one more drink of this protein shake. All right, let's get going. Sorry about that, y'all. All right. Plastic Hearts Podcast with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts. $10 right off the bat. Wow. Benji Boy, playing through Tsushima on PS5, and it's like a whole new game, and it has me thinking, how will Sony handle The Last of Us 2 on PS5? Free, or will they bundle with multiplayer and sell full retail again? This is actually a great question, Plastic Heart. So we've seen now a bit of a mix, right? We saw, for example, with Spider-Man, that they did a full-on remaster of that game, right? They went and they added ray tracing, they offered, a whole bunch of graphical enhancements and things like this, but they made you pay for it. But as you mentioned, Plastic Hearts, we've also seen games like Days Gone, for example, or Ghost of Tsushima, where those were completely free, right? They were just patches. Now, they didn't introduce things like ray tracing and enhanced graphics like this, but there were, frame rate boosts and things like this. It's an interesting question. My hunch is that The Last of Us 2 was probably going to get a free patch because that game was so recent. If they charge for a remaster, quote, quote, or enhancements like 60 FPS, I think that will not go over well because that game just came out a couple months ago, right? It's not exactly the case like Spider-Man, where Spider-Man is somewhat recent, but it was 2018, so a couple years had gone by. So I feel like people, there was a lot of backlash to that announcement, but I still feel like overall people accepted it a little bit more because the game was a few years old. The Last of Us, we're talking that game came out in June, so it's not even a half a year old yet. I would be surprised if they charge for enhancements like 60 FPS or things like this for that. I think it'd be a bit of a mistake. Now, they might generate a whole bunch of sales by doing that. It is entirely possible. However, I actually don't think it would generate like a huge number because, again, as I mentioned, the game looks so good and it was so recent. So I would hope that on PlayStation 5, because I think there's got to be some kind of patch, right? It would be kind of crazy to it was their fastest selling game of all time for Sony Worldwide Studios. So it would be a bit surprising to just launch that on PS5. It has backwards compatibility, but to never enhance it, to have it just strictly forever be just the PlayStation 4 version, that would surprise me. So my hunch, Plastic Hearts, as a guess, I think they're going to give a free update for The Last of Us. I don't think they're going to charge you for it, but I could be wrong on that. Timmer, 72299, jumping in the chat. What is up, Timmer? So good to see you, Timmer. Hi, Benji. Per the recent LinkedIn leak, Marvel's Spider-Man sold more than 20 million copies. Yes, amazing. Timmer, I think I saw that this was your most popular tweet of all time. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. We had been talking on the chat for a little while that we thought it was close to that 20 million mark, right? Because it made sense. The last number we had gotten was over 13 million, and that was a year ago. So we had kind of broke down on the chat. We're like, it's probably in that 20 million range. I think we were all feeling confident about that. But now we do have the number. So good job digging that up, Timmer. It's an amazing result. Incredible. The legs on that have been phenomenal, right? It basically shows, we don't know how much over 20 million, but it sold basically probably at least 7 million copies in the last year. That's great legs, right? Really, really, really good legs. So fantastic result for it. It's just going to go higher, right? Because keep in mind, everyone that's buying Miles Morales Ultimate Edition, that remastered version of Spider-Man 2018 is going to count towards the lifetime sales of Spider-Man because it is just a remaster, right? It's not like a whole new game. It's just a remaster of the original. So Sony's going to include those remaster sales as part of the cumulative sales for that game. And I think a lot of people are buying that Miles Morales Ultimate Edition on PS5. So yeah, it's going to go way over 20. We're going to see it potentially hit up closer to 30. I don't know for sure if it's going to get to 30. I guess that partially depends on when Spider-Man 2 gets here. 30 million might be tough, but I think it will get over 25. So, yeah, gigantic. It's going to be the best-selling Sony first-party game of all time. Right now, it's that and The Last of Us Part 1, right? Part 1's also reached over 20 million units. It's going to be an interesting race, right? It's going to be interesting to see if Spider-Man can, because it's selling faster than Part 1 did, right? That's the key. The Last of Us Part 1 hit over 20 million units, but it did take quite a while to get there, right? It was a build over time. It did it through the PS3 and then the PS4 remastered version, whereas Spider-Man hit 20 million basically just on PS4 because this was before the PlayStation 5 remaster came out. So that's going to be interesting. Spider-Man very well could outsell The Last of Us Part 1 lifetime. That is very, very possible. Incredible result. Split End 89, best mod in the business. Split End's been super busy doing reviews. Just did a Black Ops Cold War review. I know that. I think Split End also did another new video for GameStop where he did Spider-Man Miles Morales, I think. So Split End, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for always being in the chat. Thank you for being an awesome mod. You are the man. Saying, what is your favorite next-gen experience so far? So for me so far, it's going to be... Okay, so the thing that has felt the most surprisingly next-gen and unique has actually been Astro's Playroom for me, because the way it utilizes that DualSense controller is just incredible. The game itself is also phenomenal, y'all. It's very, very good. It's a pack-in with the PlayStation 5, and I know sometimes a pack-in can feel like, oh, is this some sort of cheapo game? Is this some sort of game that's not very good? I'm telling y'all, Astro's Playroom is fantastic. I platinumed it. If you get a PS5, make sure you give this game a chance. It is a legitimately great game. But that was the one where there are so many unique things they do with the DualSense. I won't spoil them all here because some of them are very fun to experience for the first time yourself and shocking and surprising in some ways. So I don't want to spoil all of them for you. But trust me, they do some very, very cool things with the DualSense controller. So that was the one to me that was the most like surprising. Like, wow, this is cool. But the one that is blowing me away overall the most is Spider-Man Miles Morales. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Everyone that follows me knows this. I love comic books in general. I read a lot of DC comics in particular, but I kind of more like the movies and games when it comes to Marvel. But yeah, Miles Morales is just excellent. It is every bit so far as good as Spider-Man 2018, in my opinion. Every bit is good. It is fantastic. So those would be the two that stand out to me the most right now. But yeah, they're awesome. I hope everyone's enjoying your systems if you got them. Benji's tank top with a super chat. And we're rocking the tank top today. It is here. Tank top for Benji's tank top. Saying tank top. Also, Capcom leaks make me feel sad. Okay, yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. I think some of them could have been big surprises, but I'm excited for Capcom this gen. I still hope we get a new Dead Rising and a new Okami. Yes, so I haven't covered the Capcom leaks like super extensively on my Twitter account, and that's really for one reason. The way this happened is really unfortunate. So this isn't like one of those leaks that almost feel innocent, where it's like some person just happened to get a hold of some information behind the scenes and then puts it out there. You know, it wasn't something like that. So what happened with Capcom is they actually got hacked, and then they got held for ransom by the hackers for this information. They wanted, I believe, $1 million or $1 million. I cannot remember the exact amount, but it was a huge amount of money, right? And these hackers stole, so much information. It was a terabyte of info, I believe. It included things like games, game budgets, employee salaries, employees' home addresses. I mean, it's a scary amount of info that got stolen. So I didn't like cover it like I would, let's say, a normal leak where I would be like, wow, this leak, this is crazy. This is so cool. I kind of didn't want to bring too much attention to it because I think it really sucks for Capcom the way this happened to them. What I will say, though, Benji's tank top, is yeah, if all these projects really come out, their upcoming release slate for the next few years is incredible. So Capcom's already had an amazing turnaround, right? If you remember, I mean, it's easy to forget, but Capcom was not in a great spot kind of towards the tail end of last gen and the beginning of this generation. They were going through some troubles, right? Their quality was dipping majorly on projects like Resident Evil. A lot of people really hated Resident Evil 6. You saw games early in this gen like Street Fighter V super underperform and miss expectations. You saw stuff like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Like, they had a lot of misses, and things were a little scary for Capcom. But wow, have they come back. So Resident Evil 7 is on its way to 10 million units sold. I mean, that's incredible. It's almost at 10 million now. It will hit the 10 million total. You've got stuff like Resident Evil 2 Remake that did amazing. You got Monster Hunter World. That's their best-selling game ever for Capcom. They've had a lot of big home run hits. So Capcom's a company that is turning things around. And yeah, this release slate, it looks good. It looks amazing. So if these games all really come out, I think Capcom's going to have a phenomenal next couple 4 or 5 years. It's going to be incredible. All right, super chats are cleared. Let me hit some of these free questions. Thank you, everyone, for the super chats. Sean T. Torres, how is Age of Calamity tracking? So far, it's number one in Amazon, even against the next-gen games. So, Sean, the little bit that I can say, I can tell you shipments are very big for this game. From things that I am hearing through the grapevine, they shipped a lot of units. So it's all going to be about that sell-through number. Amazon's looking good. Some of the rumblings I'm hearing are sounding good, but I don't have like an exact prediction for you on that, other than it's going to crush the original Hyrule Warriors. Like, they're not going to be close in sales. It's going to be far, far, far larger than the original Hyrule Warriors. But in terms of like an exact upper bound, unfortunately, I just don't have enough information yet to go super in depth on that here, Sean. But I will tell you, Nintendo must be expecting some pretty good things because their shipments are looking very strong for this game. So they are expecting it to sell well. I think that makes sense, right? Whenever you look at the tie-in to Breath of the Wild, which is the best-selling Zelda game of all time, it's about to pass 20 million units. This, ties into that. It makes sense to me that this would be a home run. So it's looking good, Sean. I don't have, like I said, an exact prediction for you, but looking good. Looking good. We just had a super chat drop. Let me hit that. Benji with a super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. Always in the chats. Always so supportive. Hi, Benji. Is Watch Dogs Legion the second casualty of the busy end of the year after Crash 4? What other games are at risk? Benji, no. What I'm hearing about Watch Dogs Legion sounds promising. So I can't go more in depth on that, but I don't think so, no. Whenever you factor in digital, I believe it is doing better than Watch Dogs 2. I think. I don't know this for a fact, but the things that I'm seeing, it looks like it's doing better than Watch Dogs 2 did. Obviously, it's not going to match Watch Dogs 1. There's just no way. Watch Dogs 1 was gigantic. A lot of people forget that. But out of the gate, Watch Dogs 1 was a juggernaut. And then Watch Dogs 2 had a gigantic drop from the first one. So I think that Ubisoft's going to be happy as long as Watch Dogs performs better than Watch Dogs 2, right? You don't want to see it do less because then you would have all three entries do less than the one prior to that. A lot of people are forming their thoughts on Watch Dogs Legion because of what happened in the UK, where physical sales were down from Watch Dogs 2. But once you count digital, I believe it was actually up in the UK over Watch Dogs 2, or actually pretty similarly. And I think it's actually going to have pretty decent legs as we move forward because it's getting those next-gen enhancements. So, Benji, I wouldn't really worry too much about Watch Dogs Legion. I don't think it's like this gigantic home run, right? Like we're seeing with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It ain't something like that. Trust me, it ain't an Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But I don't think Legion's a huge bomb unless, I could be wrong here, right? This is just based off of things that I'm seeing. But I would say Crash 4 is a bigger underperformance than Watch Dogs Legion. Crash 4 is doing way less than the Insane Trilogy. Way less. Which on one hand might make sense because people are super, nostalgic and they loved the original Crash games. But Crash 4 did way less, it's looking like. So unless Crash 4 starts picking up in sales, I would consider Crash 4 a bigger underperformer than Legion, just from what I'm seeing. But thank you for the super chat, Benji. I hope that might clear up a little bit. And yeah, that's just kind of what I'm seeing. Batwing here. Hi, Benji. Do you think Microsoft on purpose is dodging the Bethesda questions because they don't own them just yet, and they're referring to current Bethesda games not being taken away instead of new releases, meaning they will make Bethesda games moving forward exclusive, or do you think his statement stands true for future titles too? Could Starfield be on PS5? Well, Batwing, this is the question of the hour, right? We theorize on this all the time. I sent out a tweet this past week where I was like, the thing I'm most excited for with the Bethesda acquisition is just that we're probably at least going to finally mostly have an answer on what's going on with Bethesda. Like, I'm so sick of having a new hot take every single week, right? I myself have gone back and forth on this. I've gone from thinking at one point everything's going to be multi-platform to thinking, okay, pretty much most things are going to be exclusive, to I just have no idea, because it's hard to say because Microsoft keeps giving us mixed signals. One minute they're like, You have things like Phil Spencer saying, I don't need to put games on PlayStation to be successful. Now, he didn't outright say no to that, but he was kind of almost insinuating like, hey, we don't have to do that. We can keep them exclusive and it make financial sense for us. Then you have statements that come out, like a week later where people are like, oh, well, we don't really want to take everything away. Like, it's just who knows, right? I do think, Batwing, there is some truth to, technically, Microsoft right now does not own Bethesda. Technically speaking, they could still end up not even getting Bethesda because this deal will not be finalized until next year. Now, there's no reason to think that this is going to fall through, right? You just have to go through a long process when you're buying a company as gigantic as Bethesda. It takes a lot of paperwork. It takes a lot of making sure everything's signed and dotted correctly. Everything's approved through government channels. Everything's good. Everything is 100% legit and safe and not illegal and things like this. So it takes a while, right? This isn't like going out and, buying a small thing. This is a giant multi-billion-dollar purchase. It takes time. You always see this with the big acquisitions. Technically speaking, Microsoft doesn't own them, and that Bethesda deal potentially could fall through. So Microsoft can't say too much before the deal is done. What my hunch is right now is still, I just don't know, right? It's tough to say. I think there is going to be some exclusive stuff. It would shock me if they spent $7.5 billion and nothing's exclusive. I have to think the plan is something is exclusive out of this, right? I think the big question is Elder Scrolls exclusive? Is Fallout exclusive, right? These big giant games, because some stuff's gonna be. They're gonna do some smaller projects no matter what. Even if they keep a multi-platform strategy, something's gonna be exclusive out of this. But I don't know. I truly don't know. You just put it this way. You just saw Jim Ryan. He literally just did an interview. And Jim Ryan doesn't even know. They asked him, will Starfield appear on PlayStation? And Jim Ryan himself, I mean, this is going to be someone that's about as clued in as what's going on in the gaming industry as anyone. The dude is in charge of PlayStation, basically. And he even said, I don't know. Like, Jim Ryan was like, I don't know. I don't know if Starfield's coming to PS5. So who knows, Batwing? I truly think we will not know until this deal's done. Like, in terms of what's exclusive or not. Until probably, I think they said they think it'll be done by next summer at the latest, like spring, summertime. That's when we'll know. But before then, Batwing, it's just so hard to say. All right, I think we just had 2 super chats. We did. We had 2 super chats. Thank you so much, everyone. Killian Butler here with a super chat. Hey, Benji, hope you're doing good. I'm doing good. I'm loving my PS5. Did you see Jim Ryan's comments in regards to a PS response to Game Pass? Wonder what they're up to. So, Killian, I am loving my PS5 as well. I will be honest. I have had to rein myself back from gushing about the PS5 too much. And just wait, y'all. To y'all Xbox fans, I love Xbox too. I love my Series X. Y'all, I have, I think, over 120,000 gamer score, or close to it. I have a lot of gamer score. I play a ton of Xbox games, y'all. So I know some people always want to draw a line and say, hey, you're a fanboy of this, you're a fanboy of that. It's part of being an online presence, right? People are always going to be looking for an agenda. I promise you, I don't go out of my way to be biased towards anything. But man, the PS5 is just, I love it. I literally love it. Now, a big part of this is a key here is going to be that the PS5 has all these, Sony first-party games right off the bat, whereas Microsoft doesn't as much, right? If we had Halo Infinite, trust me, I'd be playing my Series X like crazy, and I have been playing my Series X, but, you've got stuff like Spider-Man and Astro's Playroom and Demon Souls and all this stuff day one on PS5. So at launch, of course, my attention is being pulled towards the PS5 more so than my Series X. Series X is still sweet, though. But yeah, I'm loving my PS5 too. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it, Killian. In regards to Jim Ryan's comments, again, this seems to be a little bit of an issue with Jim Ryan in general, right? And I don't mean this in a mean way. I think Jim Ryan is a fantastic businessman. I mean, there's a reason Jim Ryan has moved up as high as he has. If you look at the things Jim Ryan did in Europe for the PlayStation brand, I mean, he turned, obviously it was more than just him, right? It's a huge effort, but he himself was instrumental in helping making the PlayStation 4 a complete juggernaut in Europe. So Jim, I think, is an amazing businessman. He is not the best communicator or forward facing persona, right? He's not like, for example, just directly comparing like interviews. He's not as like fluid as someone like a Reggie was for Nintendo, or even like a Phil Spencer is with Xbox. Jim still feels like a bit of a businessman, and he's a little all over the place in how he communicates. And why am I bringing that up? Because we just had Jim Ryan recently talking about how Game Pass he thinks isn't like something that they would explore, how their games aren't going to ever be day one. And I still think they're not going to, right? I don't feel like Jim Ryan was lying about that. It doesn't make sense, I don't think, to put Horizon Forbidden West on a subscription service day one, because that game is going to sell a bajillion units at full price. But it just does continue to feel like mixed messaging from Jim Ryan, where 1 minute he's saying something, then he's kind of going back, and then he's back and forth, back and forth. Here's what I'll say, Killian. I would love to see a Game Pass equivalent for PlayStation. My guess is that if they do have something like this, maybe it's one of those things where you just see Sony first-party games hit it faster than they are on PS Now. So they have PlayStation Now, but it takes quite a while for most of their first-party games to enter the service. Some of them do, but it takes a while, right? You're usually waiting quite a bit. So maybe they have something up their sleeve where PS5 games, like their first-party games, aren't going to launch day one on the service, but maybe within 6 months or something like this, right? I mean, if you look at the movie business, right, you have a movie that comes out in the movie theaters, and then a few months later, you know, you can just buy it or rent it, right? It's more like a staggered release. Maybe you'll see something like that from Sony's first-party teams. They're going to launch, you know, at full price, and then later on, they'll dive into that subscription. Who knows? Who knows? I know they've been beefing up PS Now. They've been adding more third-party games to it, more big third-party games to it. So it makes sense. If you look at the explosive growth of Game Pass, right? I mean, it's huge. It's accelerating for Microsoft at an insane rate. So it makes sense that they would see that as attractive. And yeah, hopefully we hear something soon, Killian. Hopefully. Okay. 2 more super chats in here. Thank you for all the super chats, everyone. Thank you so much. Benji's Tank Top with a second super chat. Thank you. Shout out to Killian Butler, who got his PS5 after a long wait. Yes, yes, yes. Also, what do you think 343 Industries are going to show off about Halo Infinite? Yeah, great question. They said it's going to be strong end of year for them. So they did indicate that they have a big update coming. It's not going to be at the Game Awards. So don't go into the Game Awards, anyone, expecting to hear about Halo Infinite. 343 Industries themselves said, yes, we have a big update coming. No, it is not there. So they're going to probably just do their own thing, right? Their own release through Microsoft, through Xbox Wire, something like this. It's going to be interesting. Maybe they'll finally show multiplayer, because one of the rumors was that multiplayer was in a much better spot than single player was for Halo Infinite. So maybe that's what this is going to be, because I'd be surprised if you see Halo Infinite campaign right now, because we only saw it really back a few months ago and people really were unimpressed. So I feel like the next showing of the campaign needs to be very good. So I think we're going to wait a little bit longer before we see the campaign again. But maybe that multiplayer, right? Because Phil Spencer himself has even said they have toyed with the idea of doing a staggered release, like maybe multiplayer and then do the single player later. He said they have not made a decision on that. He said, you know, at launch they decided against that, but they haven't necessarily, like in terms of the Series X launch day, they ruled that out. But he hasn't said like in the future that they won't do a staggered release. So maybe multiplayer is really ready to go, really solid. They feel really good about it. And maybe that's going to come out early next year, and the campaign's going to be the end of the year. So that's just a guess, Benji. But I'd be surprised if we see campaign. I feel like they need to wait as long as possible to show campaign again until it is like looking stellar. All right, Eric Grozwiak. I'm sure I said that last name really, really poorly. I'm sorry, Eric, with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Eric. Hey, Benji, after seeing Cold War and Valhalla perform better on PS5, had a feeling someone was going to ask about this. Do you expect this to continue or flip-flop in a year or so? Stay safe. So it is a tough question, Eric. This is really tough. So here's what I will say. Especially in the case of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it seems like that port, or not, I shouldn't say port, but that version of the game is just not optimized well. I don't necessarily think it's a power gap, like a huge power gap either way in that particular case. If you watch the Digital Foundry video, they themselves, like Digital Foundry, who I really respect, was basically saying the Series X version shouldn't be performing like this, at least from what they can tell with the specs. Like, the main issue here is the screen tearing. Now, if you have a variable refresh rate TV, it's basically going to fix it, right? If you have VRR on your TV, you'll probably never even hardly see any screen tearing. So this might all sound really weird to you, the people that are like, dude, the screen tearing's crazy. But if you don't, the screen tearing, there's just no way around it. People are going to defend. They're going to say, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. You know, whatever. It's not. Like, the screen tearing is bad, okay? There's times the entire screen is tearing. The entire screen. It is severe. I am someone that is not a hardcore tech, everything needs to be amazing and run perfectly person. Like, I'm really not. And it distracted me so much, I stopped playing Valhalla. Other people are not going to feel this way, right? It could potentially not bother you at all, but it did bother me. And they need to patch that. I don't know what the deal is, but everything else about Valhalla didn't really bother me. The frame rate fluctuates a little bit more on Series X and things like this, but to be honest, I don't really care about that. It didn't feel like a huge difference, but that screen tearing is crazy. It is so egregious. It is all over the place. They gotta do something about that. So and if you look at Call of Duty, the gap is not like that. It does run slightly better on PS5, but it's not one of these cases where it runs like Valhalla is, where it's a screen tear city. So I don't know if it's going to keep like this. The rumor, and this is not my rumor, this is just what's being said on the internet, so I have no idea if this is true or not. But the thing that's floating around is that the dev kit tools for Xbox are just like really unfinished and or just way different than what they were for the Xbox One. And so devs are really having to relearn how they optimize for Xbox compared to how they did in the past. Because the whole dev process is a little different. I do not know this, right? I'm not a developer. I don't know anything about if this is true or not. But that is what they're saying. What I would say, Eric, is if that's true, I think you will see things improve. I don't know how it's going to shake out in terms of which one runs better. Again, I'm not a dev. I can only speak to what's on the internet. But Valhalla shouldn't be running like that. That's not great. That's not great. The screen tearing is just, it's intense. But I don't think that's reflective that the Series X is underpowered, right? You're seeing some people run around with that like, oh my God, it must mean that the Series X is so weak compared to the PS5. I don't think that's what's going on at all, y'all. It just seems like that version has some issues. All right. Thank you for the super chats, everyone. Silence PP7. Why didn't Sony make a bigger deal about PS4 backwards compatibility before launch, given how impressive it has proven to be at improving frame rates? And what PS4 games do you want patched, plan on revisiting on PS5? This is interesting, Silence. Sony almost underplayed how good the backwards compatibility is. If you remember, like the whole build-up, there were so many questions. Like, how many games are actually compatible? How well do they run compared to Xbox? Like, we knew Series X was doing like very good backwards compatibility because Microsoft was open and honest about it, and Sony was just like really quiet about this. This is just a guess, Silence PP7, but I'm guessing it just took them a bit longer to get that whole process ironed out than Microsoft. Microsoft was already really advanced in their backwards compatibility stuff through all the efforts they did on Xbox One. So they were already set up in a really good spot for the Series X backwards compatibility because they'd been so focused on it for the last few years. So for them, it was probably really easy to talk about because they already knew, like, hey, we're good to go. Sony, I'm guessing that process took a little bit longer to just get like finalized to where they were really confident, things are running really good, everything's great, it's up to speed. That would be my guess, Silence. That's why you didn't see them going and really talking about it much. In terms of what PS4 games I'm going to revisit, basically anything that's going to get a sequel this gen, I plan on totally replaying through the originals. So I'm going to replay through Horizon Zero Dawn sometime here soon. I hope it gets patched. I don't think that game has any kind of patch right now. As far as I know, it's literally just the PS4 Pro version, running in backwards compatibility. I'd love to see a patch for that where it gets better frame rate, and maybe some better effects like from the PC version or something. So Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm going to replay through God of War this year because Ragnarok is supposedly going to come out the end of this year. God of War, I don't know if it necessarily needs a patch since apparently it can do 60 FPS. That's going to be sweet playing through that at 60 FPS. And yeah, you can just go down the list from there. If we get a Days Gone 2, I'm totally going to replay through Days Gone, which got a nice patch. But yeah, I would say, Silence, right now, out of the games that haven't gotten any kind of patches or enhancements, Horizon Zero Dawn. That's the one I really want to see. Especially with Forbidden West not too far away, right? It's not going to be the first half of this year, but they are scheduling it for the second half of 2021. So that's the one. Yep, that's it. DB will rise. How are sales of Switch doing so far in the US for the month of November? So they're looking strong. I mean, the Switch this whole year has been insane. I mean, literally, the 2020 story in terms of hardware sales is just flat out Switch. It has obliterated the PlayStation and Xbox, and it ain't close, which isn't shocking in some ways, right? I think it outselling PS4 and Xbox isn't the shocking part because it is a newer console. PS4 and Xbox One are at the end of their life cycles. We've known all year that at the end of this year, the PS5 and Series X were going to come out. So none of that is surprising. What is somewhat surprising is how gigantic Switch sales are. They're just colossal. It is tracking very good for November, but here's what I'll say, DB. We won't know for sure how high it's going to go until we see how that Mario Kart bundle does, how it's stocked, how many units, how it sells. Because they are doing, the whole Mario Kart 8 for $2.99 with a Switch, and as well as 3 months of Nintendo Online. So that's going to tell us really how it's looking. Like, are we looking at a new record November? We won't know until then because that's really going to be a giant chunk of November sales for Switch. But I'll say it's looking darn good, DB. Darn good. Amazing. Okay, let me... Okay, I thought I saw a super chat. Super chat just dropped here from Benji's Tank Top. Is that your third? I think that's your third super chat. Holy cow. Thank you, Benji's Tank Top. The Game Awards nominees' thoughts. Ori 2 majorly snubbed, in my opinion. I agree with you on that, Benji. So Jeff Keighley sent out a tweet, and he was like, hey, what do you feel like are the biggest snubs or the most deserving or whatever? And for me, yeah, Ori does feel egregious. I mean, that to me does feel pretty intense. That game has a 90 Metacritic, and I know Metacritic's not everything, right? But it is a great game. Like, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is just phenomenal. It's beautiful. It has an amazing soundtrack. The gameplay is so good. That to me feels pretty bad. I mean, that one is like, wow, how did that not make the list? Everyone's list is going to be different, so I'm not going to go too crazy on this because some people get really mad at nominations for award season. I get less so mad because the reality is none of us are going to agree, right? If every single person in chat made a list of their 6 best game of the years, very few of them would be the same 6. Very few. There's going to be some, but most people are going to have a completely different top 6 of the year. So I don't go crazy about this, but come on. I mean, Ori, I would have put that in there. That seems pretty bad to me. It was clearly one of the best games of this year. So you know, it is what it is. That to me felt like the worst snub. I agree. I would also say that Ghost of Tsushima should have been in best soundtrack. I don't know how that didn't make best soundtrack. That is an amazing soundtrack. I mean, it is good. Ghost of Tsushima felt like a big snub. Half-Life Alyx not getting in Game of the Year, I get, because you have to really like VR and you have to have actually played it, right? Probably a lot of people in this chat have not played Half-Life Alyx. I have. It is incredible. It is actually mind-blowing, like legitimately mind-blowing how crazy of an experience it is. It is the most intense VR thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. How unbelievable the sense of presence in that game is. I mean, you get lost. You get so lost in that game, I broke one of my Oculus Quest controllers, y'all, when I was playing that game. I was so in the zone that I went to throw a grenade, forgot I was in a room, and chucked my Oculus Quest controller and broke it. I kid you not. I literally broke a Quest controller playing Alyx. It is amazing. It is mind-blowing. But that one I actually somewhat more understand not making the top 6 game of the year, because I bet a lot of journalists did not play this game because they either A, don't like VR, or B, they don't have a high-end VR set. So that one I get, but yeah, Ori feels bad to me not being there. Otherwise, I honestly think most of the nominations were good, like in most categories. That's the other thing I said on Keely's tweet. I was like, to be perfectly honest, outside of the ones I just mentioned, I feel like most of the nominees they got right. Like, I think most of the games up for Game of the Year, most of the games up for Best Narrative, most of the games up for Best... You know, I could go down the list. I think most of them's right. But Ori, Half-Life Alyx kinda, and Ghost of Tsushima in soundtrack. Those are the big misses to me. Benji with a super chat. Benji, Wonder Woman 1984 will be released on Christmas Day simultaneously on theater and HBO Max. Will this be the new norm even post-COVID? Thank you for the fun question, Benji. I won't go super deep or long on this because I know some of you probably don't care about movies, but I actually pay attention to the movie business just as much as I pay attention to the video game business. A little bit less so lately because movies are dead, right? And don't worry, y'all. I'm going to get right back to video games, so don't panic here. But in regards to, Wonder Woman 1984 going straight to streaming is giant because this is a huge blockbuster. This isn't like some movies we've seen go to streaming that have smaller budgets or that, you know, were big risks in terms of like who knows how this would perform at the box office. Like Wonder Woman 1984 was going to be a gigantic box office success. Like there's literally no way around it. This movie potentially could have been $1 billion film. So to go straight to streaming, it is a gigantic move for the movie industry. I mean, giant. Now, it will be released in movie theaters at the same time, but realistically, how many people are going to go to the movie theater in the middle of a pandemic compared to just streaming it at home as part of HBO Max? My hunch, Benji, even post-COVID, you're going to see streaming just in general ramp up way more. I don't know that the movie theater business is dead permanently, because the reality is a lot of people do like going to the movies. There is a huge convenience about streaming at home, and it's relaxing, and you don't have to get dressed. You know, you can sit in your underwear if you want and watch something at home and stuff your face with pizza and popcorn. But at the same time, I do think it's really fun sometimes to go to the movies, right? I do like to just go and get a popcorn and chill and do that big screen experience. So I don't know that theaters will be completely dead once this whole pandemic thing's fixed. But I do think, Benji, that yes, you will see a bigger focus on streaming, even from huge IPs like comic book films and things like this, because streaming is, I mean, and subscriptions is the future. Even in games, you're starting to see this. All right, I'm getting back to video games now, y'all. But thank you for the super chat, Benji. All right, Kostas here. What's up, Kostas? Benji, do you think Tomb Raider 2013 has surpassed Final Fantasy VII to become the best-selling Square Enix game? Also, God of War sales were fairly close to Spider-Man after all. Do you think God of War 5 could outsell Spider-Man 2 because God of War was more beloved than Spidey? These are some tough questions and some interesting ones, which you always have, Kostas. You are a very informed individual. I love how passionate you are about sales, too. So, has Tomb Raider 2013 surpassed Final Fantasy VII? Ooh, that's a great question. My hunch is going to be no on that one, even though that game did sell a lot, right? It was huge. It was huge. I mean, the legs on it, too. It sold a lot. For now, though, I'm going to say no, because I'm also betting that Final Fantasy VII, even the classic version, has seen some sort of boost through digital channels ever since Remake got announced / released. So keep in mind, you could buy that game digitally on Xbox and PlayStation and things like this. So I'm going to guess no. Final Fantasy VII is probably still above Tomb Raider. In regards to God of War and Spider-Man, that is interesting. That is an interesting race, right? These two games, God of War and Spider-Man, are just colossal. So it's tough. I mean, even their launches were fairly close, right? God of War 2018 did 3 million, Spidey did 3.3. That's only a 300,000 unit difference at launch. That might sound like a lot. 300K, that's huge. Once you're up into the millions, it's a chunk, but it's not like this staggering, right? We're not seeing a 1 million unit difference at launch. It was 300K. So, I mean, it could be close. Yeah, God of War, the next God of War and Spider-Man 2 are both going to be juggernauts. I mean, juggernauts. That will be an interesting race to watch. I agree with you that God of War has got crazy momentum from just passion for how good that game is. I think Spider-Man's pretty freaking amazing too, though, and so is Miles Morales. I'm telling y'all, Miles is so good. If you haven't played it yet, so good. Which will sell more? I could seriously seeing it being another situation where they're close again. I could see Spider-Man 2 and the next God of War being another scenario where they're not far apart. My guess would still be Spider-Man ahead. I'm still going to lean Spider-Man 2 ahead of God of War, mostly because it is more accessible to a younger audience. And I mean, look at Grand Theft Auto 5, right? That's about as M-rated as you get. So I'm not saying that an M rating outright limits you on sales, but it does help a little bit if you're already a game that is gigantic with adults to also be able to sell to a younger audience, right? Like a 10-year-old can play Spider-Man PS4 and it be perfectly appropriate. God of War, it's not like an M in the same way that a Grand Theft Auto is. It's mostly gore and violence, so that's going to depend on how you view that. You know, it's not necessarily filled with nudity and language and some of the other stuff. There's a little bit of that kind of stuff, but nothing like a Grand Theft Auto. But I'm going to still lean Spider-Man 2 slightly, but I think they're both going to be gigantic. And it could be a close race. Kellegram saying, don't forget to like the video. Thank you so much, Kellegram, and it's great to see you here in chat, Kellegram. Hope you're doing good, buddy. I don't spam for likes, but if you want to like the video and help the channel get found and help my videos get found, I would definitely appreciate it. How long have we been going? I got about 20 minutes left, and then I got to do a hard out because I got to go to work. But we still got 20 minutes, so I can still hit a lot of questions. Sounds PP7. Thoughts on the Cyberpunk gameplay trailer, and what are you hoping to see out of the DLC expansions and next-gen versions? I think Cyberpunk looks great. I'm seeing mixed reactions online. I've seen mixed reactions of this game since the day it was announced, right? Like, I shouldn't say announced. The day that we saw what it looks like. A lot of people wanted this game to be Blade Runner 2077, and it is not that. In fact, it has more in common, I would say, with Grand Theft Auto than it does with Blade Runner. And that is going to be met with the people that really wanted a Blade Runner game very negatively, right? This is a game that is about gangs. It's about the corrupt undercity. It is about violence. It is about, you know, I mean, it's a hard M. This game is in that line with Grand Theft Auto in terms of this is going to be freaking M to the max. And I think some people wanted this, you know, super more clean, cyberpunk-ish kind of vibe, whereas this is getting down in the dirty. And, it does not bother me. I think it looks awesome. But some people don't like that. They don't like all the cussing. I see people say it's quote-unquote try hard. Here's what I'll say. If you're comparing Cyberpunk to Grand Theft Auto, I've said this before, that is music to CD Projekt Red's ears. So if you're angry about it and you're like, this looks like Grand Theft Auto, if I was CD Projekt Red, I'd be like, oh, baby, that is a good sign. If you're saying, oh, this is Grand Theft Auto 5 is literally one of the greatest selling games of all time alongside Minecraft. So I would be fine with that comparison if I was CD Projekt Red. That would not bother me in the slightest. So, that's going to depend. For me, I think it looks great. I'm hyped. I am so hyped for it. DLC expansions I expect to be super beefy because that's the way they were for The Witcher. CD Projekt Red invests heavily whenever they do DLC. They don't do just like cheap small DLC like that. It feels like a ripoff. Like if you played any of the DLC for The Witcher 3, we're talking big expansions, big hefty. I mean, Blood and Wine was almost a whole nother game. It felt like it's worth of content. So I think Cyberpunk's gonna be the same way. Really beefy, strong content. All right, I think we got 2 super chats. Let me hit those super chats. Thank you for all the super chats today, everyone. As always, I really appreciate it. Ryan Pulliam with a $5 super chat. Hey, Benji, do you think Microsoft needs moves as far as reveals for TGAs? Yes, I would. Do you think Microsoft has some surprises with studios like The Initiative? Ryan, it's a great question, and here's what I'll say. If I'm Microsoft, I show something big at the Game Awards. Yep. I show something big. They went big last year. They showed the Series X console like way before anyone expected, and they announced Hellblade 2. I would do the same thing. And I don't mean like literally show obviously the same content. What I mean is a big moment, because that moment for them last year went over really well. It got a ton of buzz online. I feel like people thought it was presented really well. It's got huge viewership. Jeff Keighley just announced that day one votes for the Game Awards this year are already 2 times higher than the votes were in the same time period the year before. Regardless of how you feel about the Game Awards, right? A lot of people don't like the Game Awards. Some people do. Viewership keeps going up. I mean, it's huge. The Game Awards, the amount of people that watch that, any announcement there, you're getting giant viewership. You're getting a lot of eyeballs. And if I'm Microsoft, we all have to admit, their launch lineup for next gen is sparse outside of third parties, right? Their first party content's just not there yet. I would show something big, whatever it is, something big at the Game Awards, because I feel like, yes, launch sales are very strong for Series X and S, right? That's the name of this video, and we haven't gone too much into that yet. But launch sales for Xbox Series X and S are huge, right? The best ever for Microsoft. But you have to keep that momentum going. You can't just have a huge launch. You have to have a huge launch and continued legs. What better way to drive excitement for the next year than to show something really good? So yeah, they need to show something very, very, very good, Ryan. I think so 100%. If they're a no-show at the Game Awards, I think it's a big mistake. Timmer 72299 with another super chat. Thank you, Timmer. With Skull and Bones apparently costing 100 million euros, do you see it being the first quadruple A bomb? Timmer, it could. I'm hesitant to outright call games bombs before launch. If you notice, I don't do that much, right? People that follow me on Twitter and stuff, you don't see me all the time posting stuff about... wait. Apparently my stream's messed up. I hope y'all can see this. Apparently the stream's messed up. I don't know. I'm sorry, everyone. My internet might be going down. It looks like a storm's rolling in. So I apologize. If you can't see the stream anymore, I'm sorry. We might have to shut it down early, and if so, I apologize. I'm going to keep going for now, but I don't know if you can see this, but I'm getting notice that there's errors on the stream on my end, so we'll see. But okay, back to Timmer's question. Yeah, I don't call minigames bombs before they launch. We haven't seen Skull and Bones for a very long time, so it could be amazing. I will say, though, the buzz does not feel like it's there at all for what this game is. So if the budget's as big as it is, Timmer, we haven't seen this game in forever. Whenever they do show Skull and Bones again, I think it needs to look totally different than the last game that we saw. Okay? The last game that we saw, it just didn't look that great. It looked almost like a minigame expansion for Assassin's Creed 4, right? It didn't feel like, when I saw it, like, hey, this looks like a huge, giant, standalone, quadruple A game. Like, that is not what that looked like to me. It looked like, hey, this is an evolution of the kind of side stuff you did in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Like, it needs to, if this is going to be some big, giant, standalone thing, it needs a really good hook. And I think that means you need to be able to leave your boat, right? You need to have like some sort of adventure. Like, it was just a boat. You're just steering a boat around shooting each other. I mean, I don't know how long that's going to keep people engaged, right? Sea of Thieves is a huge success over time, but that lets you get out of your boat, explore, troll other people, jump on their boats. You know what I mean? Like, just controlling a boat around, I don't know how many people that's going to hook. So, yeah, I would say, Timur, I'm not feeling great about Skull and Bones. They keep insisting that it's going to come out, that they've been retooling some stuff behind the scenes. I would say I hope so. That game needs to look a lot different to be a giant success, in my opinion. All right. Let's get back to some free questions because super chats are cleared. I'm going to start pulling from a little bit lower. Or here, actually, I think I saw a good one up here first. I just want to make sure I hit as many questions as possible, y'all. You know how tough this can be to hit them all. Okay, let's go into this because we haven't gone too much into it, and I thought we would, so that was the name of my YouTube video. Sometimes this happens, right? Sometimes I make a thumbnail and a title, and what we actually talk about doesn't end up being exactly what my thought was that was going to be the highlight. So Kyle Borchert here. What's up, Benji? When do you think we'll finally get PS5 sales numbers? My guess is early next week. Well, Kyle, I thought there was a good chance we'd get them today because Europe launched, right? They just launched, and I didn't think we were going to get anything before that, right? I was not surprised at all that we did not get any PR release, just after the US launch, because they're going to wait for that global number. So I'm not surprised. I thought we would get a Friday announcement. There's still time, right? It's still in the US pretty early in the day, especially for the West Coast. So potentially still today is theoretically possible. I would say if not, Kyle, Monday or Tuesday. I expect Sony to announce the largest launch in PlayStation history. Monday or Tuesday, outpacing the PS4. That would be my expectation. Japan sales are rough, y'all. It sold, I think, 118,000 if I remember off the top of my head, whereas the PS4 did over 300,000. Again, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, I apologize if I'm getting this all wrong, y'all. I really apologize. Let me double check that actually before I tell you that that's fact. Let me see. Let me check something really quick. Yeah, 118,000. I mean, that's a low launch. For Japan, it's not good. But to be clear, Sony stocked clearly not much in Japan because that 118,000 is a sell-through. However, Sony just don't have much that appeals to that Japanese market right now, right? So even with a lot of stock, I don't know how well PS5 is going to sell for the next couple months in Japan. My expectation is not very high until Final Fantasy 16 gets here because there's just not a ton there for that Japanese market. But globally, right, in the West, I expect PS5 to be completely on fire. So my guess, you're going to get a global best-selling launch for the PlayStation brand announcement probably Monday or Tuesday would be my guess. Kyle, that would be the guess. All right, I want to make sure I hit JCat here because JCat was in the chat. What is up, JCat? Always in the chat, always so supportive, saying at Benji-Sales. About the Xbox Series consoles in Japan. Although pre-orders did sell out online, I've been searching for tweets by Japanese people and the consoles can be bought over the counter. The Series X is harder to get, but the Series S is available in major retailers like Yodobashi. I'm pointing this out because they are not completely unavailable like the PS5. Thank you so much, JCat, for the info. I am not a specialist on the Japanese market. A lot of people are, actually, because the Japanese market is like some of the most public data you can get via Famitsu. It used to be Media Create would post a ton too, but there's like a lot of numbers there that you can get. I just have not been as specialist in the Japanese market because I find it slightly less interesting than the rest of the markets. And that's because, and this might sound like an oxymoron, but Japan is so different than the West. So for some people, that's really interesting. For me, it's less interesting because I'm more like interested in like how big something is worldwide. Like that's really the things that excite me when I see something like Valhalla setting a new worldwide record launch for the franchise. Like that's the stuff that floors me. It's not so much like, hey, this random game did 100,000 units in Japan. That for me isn't that exciting. For a lot of people it is though, so I totally understand that. But yeah, Japan is the market I definitely, out of the big ones, out of the Europe, out of the US, out of those kinds of markets. Japan, I'm not as well versed in. So thank you, JCat. Super interesting. I'm not surprised. Xbox just has had a horrible time breaking into that Japanese market. I don't expect that to greatly change this gen. I don't think it's impossible that they do better than the Xbox One there, because the Xbox One was a literal failure of colossal proportions in Japan. I mean, it barely sold anything, right? I think the stat that I saw from someone on a forum was that Xbox Series X and S combined launch week did like almost 20% of the lifetime sales of Xbox One. That's like how bad Xbox One sells over there. And it was actually lower than the Xbox One launch. So I think they could potentially do better than they did last gen there. But like we talked about last chat, Japan's just never going to be like a super strong market for them. It's just not. All right, we got a $10 super chat. Let me hit that super chat. Case by case basis. What is up, case by case? On Starfield, the fact that Jim Ryan doesn't know about exclusivity probably means there was no prior deal in place. Yes, I would agree. Let's also be honest. You aren't seeing a PS logo during an Xbox Starfield trailer. Case by case, I agree. That is one sign to me that no contract was done, right? If there was a signed deal, let's say that Sony would have went out and paid for timed DLC, right? Which isn't theoretically impossible that contract would already be a signed deal. That stuff happens. Sometimes people pay for DLC years before a game's even out. If they think it's going to be big, if they're really confident in it. We saw Sony do this with the VR version of Resident Evil 7. We just got the information on that out of the leaks with Capcom. There's tons of this money-hatting type stuff, right? So if Sony would have already had some sort of contract in place with Starfield, let's say behind the scenes they had gone out and secured that, Jim Ryan would probably still be pretty darn confident. Just like Deathloop, right? Deathloop was a signed exclusive. Ghostwire Tokyo, it's a signed exclusive. The fact he doesn't know on Starfield, I agree case by case, it means flat out Jim Ryan and Sony did not have any sort of deal on Starfield. So that could go any direction now. Could be exclusive, could not be. I agree with you, no matter what, when we see the Starfield trailer, the focus is going to be Xbox. Question's going to be if it is multi-platform or not, though. But yes, clearly when the advertising comes around any of these Bethesda games, even if theoretically they have some of these stay multi-platform, all the branding is going to be Xbox. It's going to be Game Pass. It's going to be Xbox. You're going to see the Xbox splash screen with it. You're going to see available on Game Pass. They ain't going to really acknowledge the PlayStation version much, no matter what. Even if some of these games go multi-plat, Microsoft's going to make you think Xbox is the place to play. And they could be exclusive, right? We don't know. We really don't know. But yeah, I agree. It could go any way. It's still who knows what. Okay. We've got 10 minutes, y'all. 10 minutes. And then I gotta get ready for work. So I'm going to pick out some stuff that's really different, that's not from people I've hit many on. Alex Bailey. Hi, Benji. Will Switch go 24 months as NPD's best-selling hardware, or do you think PS5 will overtake it? Well, Alex, it depends. So in revenue, right? Money, revenue. PS5 should place higher than Switch in November because keep in mind, PS5 is way more expensive. So it just depends. If you're talking about the streak in terms of, because NPD does a lot of rankings based off of revenue. In revenue, PlayStation and Xbox, I believe, are both going to be above Switch for November NPD period because Series X is $500 and the $500 disc edition of the PS5. You're basically talking about a $200 difference for every one of those consoles compared to a Switch, right? Even the cheapest version of the Xbox, the Series S, is as expensive as the most expensive Switch, which is $300, right? Whereas Switch even has a cheaper version, a Lite, that's $199. So revenue, Switch will not be number one in November. Very, very unlikely. Even if it breaks a record for unit sales, it almost seems impossible it will place higher on revenue than those consoles, just because of the gigantic price difference. In terms of units, though, I don't think PS5 or Xbox are going to outsell Switch in November. Nope. I don't think so. I mean, the pace we have seen for Switch this year is astronomical. And basically, there's a probably, I don't know for sure yet, right? But we have a chance that Switch could hit over 2 million in November, depending on what units are going to look like for the Mario Kart bundle, right? If they ship enough, we could have a potentially 2 million unit November. Xbox and PlayStation won't have 2 million units in November available. Like, they're not going to sell 2 million consoles in 1 month in the US. They have to supply for the whole world at launch, and you're not going to have that many units manufactured, I don't believe, of these consoles for one market. So units, it's unlikely, Alex. Switch should be probably the best-selling console in November. And probably December, yeah. Probably both those months. You probably, and again, this is all probability, folks. I don't know the exact amount of units these companies are manufacturing. Switch, PS5, and Series X and S in the US are going to sell every single console they ship until next year. Flat out. There will not be any of these consoles that don't sell everything this holiday. Next year, things will change. But this year, for holiday, that it's all going to come down to how many they make. And I think Switch is in a strong enough production capacity compared to the other two that, yeah, I think November and December will both go to Switch, yeah. M.H. Jafarian saying, hi, Benji. God bless you and your family. Thank you. That is a very kind comment, M.H. Jafarian. Thank you so much. The Last of Us Part 2. I loved it. What's your opinion about it? How many copies has it sold so far? And will it win Game of the Year? Thanks a lot. Here's my controversial opinion that some people are going to hate, but I loved The Last of Us Part 2. I don't think it's perfect. There are a few pacing issues, I think, in the game. There are a few narrative things that were kind of like, I'm not as negative on it as some people in terms of narrative, but there were a couple things that felt a little weird. I won't spoil any of them here. But overall, I loved it. Overall, I think it's incredible. How many units has it sold? I'm going to guess. So we got an announcement that Ghost of Tsushima is over 5 million. The Last of Us Part 2 started faster. Started with 4 million. It looks like legs of Ghost of Tsushima are better than the legs of The Last of Us, but I don't think it's enough to make a gap where Ghost of Tsushima is higher than The Last of Us. So MH as a guess. I'm going to say The Last of Us is probably between 6 and 7 million. So that means anywhere from 6.0 million to 7.9. I think it's somewhere in that range. If Ghost of Tsushima is at 5, I think The Last of Us, which was a month earlier and had a bigger launch, is anywhere in that 6 to 7 million unit window. Legs to me haven't looked strong enough that it's up over 10 already. I don't think that's likely at all, actually. So 6 to 7 million would be my guess in units. And will it win Game of the Year? I think so. It's the most nominated game at the Game Awards, so that kind of tells you something. It doesn't mean it's a lock. It could still miss, but that means that a lot of journalists are voting for The Last of Us in a lot of categories, right? And keep in mind, the majority of this vote, there is a user vote, and that is factored in, but the majority of the votes are going to come from the critic panel. And they're clearly nominating it like crazy, which means a lot of people are putting it on the list. So I think so. I think it's definitely your front runner for Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Yeah, it has 10 nominations. It's in 9 categories, and one of those categories, best performance, it has 2, right? It has Laura Bailey and it has Ashley Johnson for, Ellie and Abby. So they have a total of 10 nominations. That's big. big, big, big. Case by case, do Japanese audiences care about games like God of War and The Last of Us? The Last of Us, somewhat. God of War, no. Seriously, Japan does not care about God of War. It's crazy. As big as God of War is in the West, it is nothing in Japan. They don't care at all. No, Japan does not care about God of War. Maybe that can eventually change, but as of now, no. They just don't care. Somewhat Sunny saying, hey Benji, it's at BLKCK. What is up from Twitter saying, glad I could finally catch your live stream. Thanks for being here live. Thank you everyone who's been here live. Thank you so much. All right, I have time for just like 1 or 2 more questions. So I'm going to pull out a couple good ones here right at the end. Right at the end, let's see. 1 or 2 more and we're done. I wish I could go longer, but I gotta go to work. Alex Roca, do you think the launch worldwide shipment for PS5 is bigger than the one they had for PS4? Yes. At least for the fiscal year, it seems it's going to be the case. Alex, I believe so, yes. As we noted, Japan, no. Japan had a much smaller amount of units than PlayStation 4 had. Much, much smaller. But I think the main reason Japan had less was because they're focusing on the West, right? They shifted those units over to the West that they would have sent over there, traditionally, to maximize their U.S., Europe, Middle East. I don't know if it's out everywhere in the Middle East or not yet, but, these kinds of markets over Japan, because Japan for them hasn't been a great market, right? It has been decreasing over there. So I think that's the case. I think their worldwide launch shipment is bigger. I don't know that it's a night and day difference bigger. I think you will see it open higher than PS4, but I don't know that it will be a giant gap, but I do think it will be higher. Yes, Alex, I think so. DB Will Rise saying, not to pat my own back, but I've been saying for years that Spider-Man and God of War 2018 are really close in sales, and nobody believed me. Well, DB, give yourself a pat on the back. It is always okay to give yourself a pat on the back when you're doing good with sales, because sales is tough. People take that for granted, right? Occasionally, most people are really, sweet and nice about my content. Occasionally, they'll be rude about it if I get something wrong, and I'm like, y'all, you know how hard it is to get this right? It ain't easy. It ain't easy. All right, let's do one more. One more question. One more. All right, we're going to give Peter 420 the last one here. Peter 420 saying, when Jim Ryan said no next-gen experiences until 2022, that tells me Horizon 2 and God of War Ragnarok will be 2022 games. Peter, I don't think so. I think this is, again, a case of Jim Ryan not having the best outward-facing persona in his communication. Oh, Jim. Oh, Jimbo. I think that those games, I would say that Horizon's still probably almost definitely making 2021. I believe so. God of War Ragnarok, like we've talked about before, that could easily slip to 2022. That would not shock me even in the slightest. So that one could have. What I think Jim was trying to say is that starting in 2022, you're going to see games that devs like really have figured out exactly how to maximize the PlayStation 5, right? I think that's what he meant. Like, you're going to see some great looking games, some good stuff in 2021. But as we see with most console generations, games continue to look better the later in a generation because devs really figure out all the spots they can maximize here and cut back a little bit here, but it's going to boost here. Like, there's a lot of tricks that you figure out to maximize consoles over the years. So I think that is what he actually meant. Not so much like in terms of like game delays or things like this. I think he was more just saying, hey, starting in 2022, you're going to see those bangers where it's like, wow, this is blowing my mind. Like Demon's Souls and stuff already looks great at launch. But I think what he's saying is stuff's going to look even better and be more impressive by the time you get there, just because people have had more time with the hardware. All right, everyone, I got to call it a chat there. I wish I could go longer, but I got to go to work. Thank you so much, everyone. If you're not subscribed to my channel, make sure you hit subscribe. We do one of these streams every single week. We're going to be back again next week. We do them every single week. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not already. Make sure you hit like on the video if you want to. If you do like the video, to help people find my channel, to find my videos and help out the YouTube algorithm. I hope everyone's doing great. I hope you're all doing amazing. Stay safe. Play some games. I'll catch you either over on Twitter or here in the next YouTube video next week, everyone. I will see you later. Have an amazing day, y'all.